Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the best damn social club in the universe. I am your host, Jedi ASU, and thank you so much for joining me as part of this extremely busy week leading up to probably one of the most wonderful times of the year. We actually get to talk about college football, and I am very, very excited to talk again with a good friend of the show, Alicia De Artola, Penguin of Troy on Twitter, and we're going to go ahead and talk about what we can expect from USC and how they're going to prep for ASU. So as always, make sure you pour yourself a drink, sit back, relax, and let's get social. It is Thursday, the 5th of November in the year of our COVID 2020. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of a respite in all the craziness that has been going on this week. So looking forward to it as always. Remember to subscribe on YouTube, ring that bell so you go ahead and get alerts every time I go live. And if you're in the chat, make sure you go ahead and post your questions in there. Or if you're watching a replay, make sure you go ahead and tweet your questions to both Alicia and myself, and you'll see our handles in the main interview. And so let's get started. Alicia, welcome to the 42 Social Club. Happy Thursday. Lovely to see you again.
Yeah, it's always great to come on. I'm excited for a new season to start and ready to see what USC has to offer.
Exactly. I know that all of us are extremely excited about that one, and just when the schedule came out, right, there was a lot of excitement, but then there was always that trepidation, if you will, about what's going to happen, and we kind of got a glimpse of that, and we'll definitely talk about that Cal game towards the end of the show. But wanted to get your feedback. What are you seeing? I know you just shared as we were pre-gaming, USC is giving you, some clips, some feedback, user and coach access, but what have you been seeing, in the past few weeks that's caught your eye and what you like?
Yeah, it's different obviously because I'm having to filter everything through what USC shows us because we're
Right.
not in practice, which I didn't expect to be. So there's,
Fair.
I totally understand where we're at with that. And to USC's credit, they've given us as much access as I think as they could possibly give us
Okay.
at this stage. So I think they've done pretty well on that front. Really, we've just continually heard about the progress that the offense continues to make. We've heard some really good things on the injury front. There were a lot of guys that were dealing with some naggy
Mm,
hamstrings when they came back from a long layoff, which sort of was expected. And USC has now confirmed this past week that pretty much everybody that was in doubt,
okay.
the important guys like Drake Jackson and Vavai Malapai and Marquise Stepp and Brew McCoy and all those guys
Right.
are going to be good to go against ASU
Okay.
in some form. So that's been good. And then really the talk of the town has been what Todd Orlando is able to do. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, we didn't really get to see what this defense looks like.
Right.
When spring camp got canceled, we haven't been able to see firsthand what it looks like because the videos that they share with us, they never include, 11 stuff. So I
Right.
understand they don't want to give their stuff away. But the word on the street is that they are taking well to the
Okay.
defense and that the big improvement that they're really talking up, which they better back this up, is the linebacker core, which
Okay.
was a disappointment last year. And even just on Thursday morning, Clay Helton was talking up how excited he is to see Pala'ia and Ateote
Okay.
take the field this year and show improvement from what was a really disappointing 2019 campaign for that entire unit, but EA in particular. So it's really just about trying to read between the lines
Hmm.
on how people are picking things up, and then obviously we'll be able to understand for sure whether or not they've taken this defense, whether or not the players are ready
Right.
to tackle. That's the other big thing that's come out of camp is that they've been physical.
Okay.
They're saying that they're physical. Now, this has been a talking point around USC about the lack of physicality in practices.
Hmm.
And the Todd Orlando has been very invested in the idea of tackling, of being in full pads,
Okay.
of making sure that they are ready to avoid some of the pitfalls that we've seen from other programs where
Hmm.
missed tackles are a problem. It's
Right.
obviously given the offseason, that's to be expected. So USC has gone out of their way to talk about how they've tried to mitigate some of that.
Mm,
Now, they can talk that talk. They need to walk that walk on
right. Absolutely. And so now what is it a basic is it a basic four I'm sorry, is it a 4-3 that they're going with Todd Orlando, or
It
what have
is
they been talking about?
it is a 3-3-5.
Oh, so they are deciding to go that way. Cool.
Yes. Yeah, but it's a 3-3-5, but the they have obviously the front three, and then Drake Jackson is going to fill one of the linebacker roles
Okay.
as a hybrid offensive line I'm sorry, defensive lineman pass rusher kind
Hmm.
of guy. So it may function as a, a 4-2-5 depending on how they need it to go, but technically it's a 3-3-5, which is slightly different from last year when they went all in on the four-man front.
Right.
It didn't really work. So
Mm.
we'll see how this one turns out.
That's interesting to see because we just left the 3-3-5, right?
Exactly.
Right. So it'll
That's
be
been the top
curious
of
to
all of
see.
our previews is ASU moving to the 4-3 and whether or not that's the wisest idea. But we'll see about that on Saturday as
And
well.
that's the curious thing too, especially with the 3-3-5, because everyone always talked about, like SD San Diego State always had the talent, right, to be able to plug into that. And so given, how USC recruits and everyone else, talent is destiny. Everyone says that, but do you think, the people that they recruited, the kids that they recruited and how what they recruited them for, do you think they can snap into that 3-3-5 a little bit easier than say some other schools that adopt it that may not necessarily have recruited as well?
Well, and that's the question that I think USC needs to answer. They do have the talent. Someone like Drake Jackson, I don't care where you put him on the field. You can put him at safety for all I care, and he's going to be a talented player.
Okay,
The question is, are you using him to the best of his ability? If you
fair.
put Drake Jackson at safety, you're asking him to do something that, he's going to do his best to try to do, but you're kind of setting him up for failure, right?
Got
So
it.
that's the big question for a Drake Jackson type is they are trying to mold him like a Khalil Mack.
Okay.
Theoretically, I think he's capable of that,
Hmm.
but you don't know that until you see what he's up to. And he's had to drop weight in order to do this. So he's
Mm.
had to cut down from, 265, 270 down to 250, 245.
Wow. Okay.
So he's dropped a lot of weight and they want him to be fast. Well, will that carry on his body better?
Hmm.
Will he be able to match up against a tight end if they need him to?
Right.
Will he be able to match up with running backs in coverage if they need him to?
Okay.
Those are the big questions that I have. Based on his pure talent, I think he probably will be fine.
Okay.
I mean, there's always a chance though that
Absolutely.
outside of the pass rush, he that maybe that won't work out for him. But he's really the swing the swing vote there,
Yeah.
as it were, on whether or not this defense works out. The defensive lineman, USC has prioritized speed a little bit
Hmm.
on the defensive line. They haven't. I mean, Brandon Peely is 325 pounds, so I can't really say that they've
Right.
abandoned large humans, but they haven't necessarily gone all out on size. So
Right.
is a question that they need to answer. Can the front three eat blocks? Can they be
Okay.
guys who are just space eaters? That I think is up in the air. That very much is up in the air.
Fair.
So they have recruited well. A guy
Mhm.
like Brandon Peely, a guy like Marlon Tupelotu have gifts that hopefully USC can take advantage of. But uh, Marlon Tupelotu is not a 325-pound nose tackle who
Right.
does to other teams like BYU's nose tackle did to USC this past last year. So
Right.
uh, the real question on that will be what someone that like the new defensive line coach Vic So'oto is able to get out of those guys. I am kind of bullish on them because I like that group. I like that
Okay.
top tier guy.
Right.
Um, Even without Jay Tufele, I like that group, but they are short on depth.
Oh,
Um,
really?
well, if they lose Marlon Tupelotu, if they lose Brandon Peely, they're gonna have to turn to some redshirt freshmen. They're gonna have to turn to some
Mm.
freshmen. So they are walking a little bit of a tightrope there. But the starting lineup that we're gonna see against ASU, I like the group.
Good.
So I think the personnel can work
Okay.
with this new scheme. Certainly, I think USC's corners and safeties are. I worry not about them in the slightest because I
Right.
think they will fit this group. But that front seven is really the key to pulling this off. And like you said, USC has recruited well. So
Right.
the guys are there. It's
Hmm.
whether or not they gel quickly enough
Right.
to compete with a team like ASU that has a quarterback like Jaden Daniels,
Right.
or that has, speed guys like Frank Darby. So that's the
And that's interesting you say that, right? Because given some of the given the long off season, and I've been able to have a lot of conversations about how the 335 really works, right? And so it's like with the 335, right? Do you see the front three getting that pass rush, right? Being able to go ahead and disrupt the quarterback a little bit more, or like ASU, are you guys going to be a lot more dependent on the backfield compensating for it, if you will, right? Because I think that was one of the things that was I don't know if it was an Achilles heel, but that was one of the things that you always said, that we always saw, that the defensive line was never not getting to the quarterback as frequently as it needed to, so the linebackers and the backfield had to pick up the slack. So I think, like you said, the USC backfield is you're confident in, but like you said, that front seven I think is going to be very. This first game is going to be very telling. There's going to be a lot to see and consume.
absolutely. And that is the the most difficult thing to pin down
Hmm.
is each of those individuals. I do think has Marlon Tupelotu is very underrated in terms of his explosiveness. He's
Okay.
produced some decent sack numbers over the years, some decent tackle for loss numbers over the years. Brandon Peely is just a super athlete at his size. His biggest problem is from play to play being on top of where he needs to be.
Mm,
So those are, I'm more concerned about their discipline than
okay.
their individual ability to make a play, for
Got it.
instance. USC's problem over the years has not necessarily been that they are, lined up poorly or don't, aren't capable of doing what they do. It's that they take one play off collectively
Oh,
and then it's over.
okay.
Or take, a couple plays off collectively
Hmm.
and it's over. So um, the consistency is more of my concern
Okay.
than, say, any lack of pass rushing talent
Okay.
in those spots. The question is whether or not they can do it from play to play to
Right.
play, as opposed to just get a big tackle for loss on one play and then you give up a 50-yard run on the next.
Okay.
It doesn't quite balance out.
Yep. That's fair, and that's kind of interesting you say that, right? Because I remember back in some of the Todd Graham years, right, and even then going further back in some of the other US ASU coaches, is that, like you said, there would always be some mental hiccup, right? That would just, and it's always, and unfortunately for you ASU, it's always a third down. It's like third down and whatever.
Yes.
So it's always some
USC,
godforsaken third down.
USC fans will tell you that the worst down to be in is like third and 15, because the number of third and 15s that USC has given up over the years is mind boggling.
Yeah, I
But
think we're in that bucket with you guys.
yes, I mean, these are aggressive defenses
Right.
that are out to make havoc. And when it works really well. And
Hmm.
when it doesn't, it is a
You're
disaster. So
very happy when it does work, and we're
yes,
like, oh, another third down conversion.
yeah,
And you don't want to try me actually mentioned, kind of reinforcing, you don't want to try me's in the chat, reinforcing your comment about you being very bullish on the D line, right? They're saying that the DL has a lot of snaps as a unit,
yes.
right? So I guess that's definitely reinforces kind of what you're saying with them.
Yeah, the Marlon Tupelo too is a guy who's been around forever.
Hmm.
Brandon Peely is a senior now,
Okay.
so these are not young kids. Like I said, you might see some young kids if one of those guys isn't available.
Right.
But even at the third spot there on the defensive line, they have Caleb Tremblay, they have Nick Figueroa, they have Connor Murphy.
Okay.
Those are guys that maybe don't grab the headlines quite so much, but they're all redshirt seniors. So these are
Okay.
veteran guys who have been together for a long time, who have been there for been at USC for a long time. So um, they are guys I think that USC can lean on.
Right.
They just all need to stay healthy. And
That's the
you
key
know,
this year.
I've
Absolutely.
I've had issues in the past where I bank on USC being healthy, and availability is not something that USC has been very good at.
That
Over.
injury bug strikes, and it's like, and it rotates through the conference, right? It's like, you just don't know who it's gonna. It's like, one team, like it was Stanford one year, and it was, ASU one year, but it just kind of just moves around, and it's like whoever it gets, it's like, ugh, it's our year for the
And it's
bug.
all at one position
It
for
is, or it just wipes out two, or it's like what, or it's both one position on both sides of the ball, and you're like, ugh,
yeah.
why? Why? The football gods always get us. So,
That's being a sports fan.
and so definitely, and so we're still talking about defense, right? So, and you've had a number of names in there, but who's your person to watch? I think you're probably one of the guys on the deal, but who else do you think we should be keeping our eye out for on the defensive side?
Well, Clay Helton has talked up Palaie Nateote, the linebacker.
Okay.
When he was a freshman, the cameos that he made, we were looking at him saying he's a future All-American.
Mm.
He's a future number 55 for USC. And there was a lot of hype. And then his sophomore season came around and put on some weight, didn't fit what USC was trying to do. The linebacker core in general was a mess. It was just not good. So
Okay.
they're hoping for a renaissance from him.
Oh, it was a sophomore slump, I would guess.
It was very much a
Okay.
sophomore slump. Yes.
Cool.
So Todd Orlando has paid special attention to getting the most out of him.
Right on.
He is one I'm most intrigued to watch, I think I would say. The one that I am certain of, the one that I think actually will contend for potentially All-American honors, who is the kind of guy who you will notice him on the field every time USC plays. It's Talanoa Hufanga, who is the safety.
Yep.
And one of the big reasons why I'm very excited to see Hufanga is that Todd Orlando's defenses have had those playmaking safeties. He the safety that comes up in his closer to the line of scrimmage, who is up making plays and run support. That is Hufanga.
Okay.
To a T. That's his style. That's what he wants to do. He's another guy who's dealt with injury, and who that would be my if Talanoa Hufanga isn't a first team All Pac-12 safety, it's because he didn't play enough games. That's the gist of it. He, as a talent, as an instinctual football player, he has been absolutely outstanding, and I think he's going to have a hell of a year in 2020 if he's on the field.
That's exciting to hear.
That's my only anxiety is I have to preface that with if he's on the field.
Yeah, that's always. I think that's all. I think we should all be prefacing that, right?
Yeah. Well, yes.
And so moving on to the offense, right? Are we expecting to see the? I don't like using this word, especially since it's gotten such a negative connotation the past few weeks in the SEC. But it's an air raid-esque type of offense, throwing yards, getting down the field. Is that what we expect this year as well?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Graham Harrell is a student of the air raid.
Mm-hmm.
He has his own system. It's mostly air raid, but it's not a pure air raid. Like it's not what Mike Leach was running at Washington State or is now running it at Mississippi State.
Right.
It's not the exact same thing as what Graham Harrell is doing,
okay.
but it's built from the same tree. It comes from the same tree. So USC will try to stretch the field with their receivers. They will try to take what I think the biggest thing about it is really it's about taking what the defense will give you.
Okay.
So every play has a reaction to what the defense is doing. If they want to take away the outside receiver, then they're going to hit the inside receiver. If they want to, take away the over the top, they're going to hit underneath. Whatever it is that you want to present to USC, that's what they're going to take. And the scary thing about USC's offense is, and this is what has gotten USC into trouble in before Graham Harrell came. USC has always had so many playmakers that theoretically you can hit any defense with 1,000 different approaches because you have 1,000 different playmakers to make use of. We called that under the T. Martin offense, the gumbo offense, because it almost got so convoluted that, then you weren't good at any one thing because you were trying to do a million things. That's where Graham Harrell has done a much better job of simplifying things, getting good at a few concepts. And those are the things that USC is going to take advantage of. If they need to go, if you put Tyler Vaughn's one-on-one on the outside, they'll go to Tyler Vaughn's one-on-one. They trust him. Drake London is a mismatch nightmare in sort of a hybrid slot tight end kind of role.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that's the funny thing. He's not a tight end, but when they talk about what they want from Drake London, they compare him to Travis Kelce. So
Oh,
that should
wow.
tell you everything about what Drake London is to USC's offense. He's not a tight end, but he's the receiving. He's doing that role.
Is he built like a tight end, or is he like a little bit leaner?
He's leaner.
Okay.
He's a 6'5" uh, basketball player. So
Okay.
he's got the length. He's not, and that's why they don't ask him to block
Right.
in like the tight end because he does not bulk. But he is in passing situations. He is that mismatch nightmare
Okay.
for USC. And then obviously on
Especially on
Ross.
the inside, right? Because now you're just at
Yes,
that height. That's crazy.
yes, and that's exactly what they try to do with him.
Okay.
And then Amon-Ra St. Brown will be someone who I expect to move around a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He can go out in the slot. I think he can go outside. It just depends on how they decide
Right.
to
Whatever the
utilize him
format.
on any given place. So he can cause anybody problems because he's that much of a technician at wide receiver. So I know I've gotten off of topic about the air raid in particular,
That's
but
quite all right. I mean, 1960s kid in the chat called it the gumbo raid.
yeah, well, and that is a danger that USC can end up getting into. But if you have a talented play caller like Graham Harrell seems to be, and you have a talented quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
and then you give them those kinds of weapons, it does open up a lot of things because you're not reliant on the one, number one receiver.
Right.
If Drake London turns out to be USC's leading receiver in a game, it's not a bad thing. If Tyler Vaughn's turns out to be USC's number one receiver in a game, that's perfectly fine. If Amon-Ra is that guy, that's
Right.
perfectly fine. Now you have Brew McCoy coming in as a redshirt freshman, who's another physical receiving talent who plays offense like a defender. I'm excited to see
Yeah.
now that he's gotten over his all the trouble from last year with his transfer and his illness and all
Mm-hmm.
of that kind of stuff. That was a whole saga. But
Right.
the point of this is that USC has spent the last year and a half installing an offense that Graham Harrell has designed
Mm-hmm.
that is built on simplicity and built on we're going to install it in 3 days and we're going to run it over and over and over and over and over again in practice. And that was last offseason. That's what it was all about.
Okay.
This year, obviously, they didn't have the same spring camp or anything like that. But
Right.
I mean, this is the offense that's built for this kind of offseason. There's not a
Okay.
big playbook. There's not a ton to do. It's more about concepts than plays. So
Okay.
Keaton Slovis is just tasked with, go out there and if the defense dictates that you do this, do that. And Keaton
Right.
Slovis is built for this offense as well. So um, I really enjoy what Graham Harrell has brought in terms of USC doing what works
Mm-hmm.
and doing what they do well. The only question I have for Graham Harrell and this air raid offense is will defenses have had time to figure it out
Mm.
because it is so simple?
Okay.
Will someone like Marvin Lewis or Antonio Pierce
Right.
have been able to sit down for a couple weeks and say, this is what they do,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what we're going to do to stop it?
Right.
Um,
And
if
ASU had a bit of a success with that last year.
in the second
In the
half, yeah,
second, third, and fourth quarter, the first quarter we were shell shocked, and it was
yes,
brilliant. How, how you shell shocked us, but then it's like you said, something clicked. They figured it out, and then it was only 3 points from those 3 quarters. But
right.
is
That's
that, and that's the thing, right? And it's like, yeah, it'll be curious. Again, it's exciting that we get to figure it out and see what's going to happen right in a few
yeah.
days.
Well, but that's the question that I have for Graham Harrell is you're coordinating at the big boy level now. At
Mm-hmm.
North Texas, he was able to navigate that in year two.
Right.
But now you're going up against Pac-12 coordinators, and what will they do to adjust to what USC threw at everyone last year? That's what we're going to find out how good of an offensive coordinator he is by how
Right.
well he is able to adjust to having a second year in this system. But based on the end of last year, man, that offense was absolutely rolling. It
Mm-hmm.
was unstoppable. Even Iowa, the best defense that USC faced all year last year, They couldn't stop that offense when Keaton Slow was in the game. He
Right.
got injured, and then USC's the offense fell apart.
Yeah.
But that was a really good sign for USC. So that's something that they're going to have to sort of keep chugging along.
Exactly. It almost seems like we're both kind of not in the blessed with the same situation. We have two very talented quarterbacks, but let us not talk about if something happens to them.
Yes.
Let us not say that one out loud, and that is something that we shall not talk about. Keaton Slovis, what do we expect? Has he gained any weight? What's he looking like? What's the feedback and so forth about him this year?
The offseason for Keaton was all about strengthening his entire body. So
Okay.
he put on some weight. He's put a lot of emphasis on core strength,
Hmm.
on muscle development, which I think USC has pinpointed those things. He missed, I think it was four games last year because of
Okay.
injury, or the better part of he didn't start against Washington. He got knocked out against Utah. He
Right.
got knocked out against Iowa, and he got obviously taken out briefly against ASU. So
Right.
it seems like USC has put that down to two things. One, it's his youth
Hmm.
in terms of the body, the sturdiness of
Yeah.
his body, and then also his awareness of being hit. So that has been
Interesting.
the
Okay.
number one. The two things that they've really emphasized this offseason is he's got to get stronger, which it seems that he's done. He's got to put on some sturdiness,
Right.
and then also he has to learn not to take the hit.
Okay.
And those are things that, again, the physical changes in him, I think those are, it's clear to me, and all, we haven't seen him in person, it's all been just photos and stuff, but
Right.
he looks that year older. He
That's
was
good.
an 18-year-old kid last year. He looks like he's maturing that physically.
Exactly. There's always
uh,
whenever you get because we got one of those shots of Jaden Daniels after one of the first practices, and you can see the bulk
no,
there. I mean, it's only 15 or so pounds, but it's 15 or so pounds of muscle that, like you said, you want to see from year one to year two.
yes, absolutely. In a full year in a college weight program, all of that, you definitely need to see that. The bigger question I have about off-season development, because
Hmm.
we can, like you said, you can see the difference there. It's okay. Does that make him less prone to injury, or is it really going to be his decision making?
Mm,
Is the mental
right.
maturity to let a play go if he needs to let it go, to
Slide, whatever it is,
slide
whatever
to a
decision
play,
it is.
which I'm sure is the same kind of thing for that Jaden Daniels is having to go through, being the freshman and learning the trade, right?
Exactly.
So
Well, that's why you always saw him because I mean that was that was even one of like in one of the first games after that Herm Edwards was saying it's like we just kept yelling at him, slide, slide, slide,
yeah,
because he's always trying to get. It's like no, slide, protect yourself, cut it out.
yeah.
So that's a very interesting contrast between him and Keaton, like you're saying. But again, now I mean this year we'll probably see a lot more of that, protecting himself and being able to say, okay, what's the right or throwing the ball away or whatever it is. So
Right.
that'll be good. And so, real quick on the offensive line, how's that one work? How do they look?
Well, it's big deal to get Elijah Vera Tucker back. I'll
Okay.
tell you that. That is the single most important offseason development, is him opting out and opting back in,
Yes.
because without Elijah Vera Tucker, this offensive line is significantly more concerning than
Okay.
it is on this day. With the AVT in there, he's going to be the left tackle. He's sliding over
Okay.
from left guard to left tackle. And he is a veteran offensive lineman
Hmm.
who I think is probably more suited to guard. But if you had to tell me anyone had to protect Keaton Slovis's blind side, he's the
Okay.
guy.
That's what I was going to ask. If technically is he more a guard than a tackle? So okay.
Yes, I think he uh, physically doesn't have. I mean, he's 6'5", so it's not like he's. I think maybe 6'4", so it's not like he's short or doesn't
Right.
have a large arm span, but he's not the prototypical
Okay.
tackle. And the bigger thing with him is really he was a technician at left guard. He
Hmm.
was a guy who didn't make mistakes, and that is the thing that USC really needs. They just need offensive linemen who can go out there and not make the key mistakes. And
Got it.
he was USC's best offensive lineman last year simply because he was the most consistent.
Okay.
He took care of business, and so he's a pro. I think he's going to go in there and settle in and will he be the greatest left tackle that USC has ever had? I don't think so, but
Mm.
he's a reliable offensive
Okay.
lineman there at the most important position there. With him taking over that left tackle spot, everything else falls into place a bit easier.
Hmm.
Brett Nealon, the center, is back.
Okay.
Um, at left guard, Andrew Voorhees, who was injured all of last year, is back healthy. He'll
Okay.
slot back into a starting job. He's got 2 years of starting experience under his belt, so
Oh,
he's an
right on. Yeah.
old hat there. So it's been a little while since we've seen him, but he's a veteran coming
Back.
back. At right guard, they've got the converted defensive lineman Liam Jimins,
Hmm.
who made that transition last year. Looked quite good, actually.
Okay.
I was incredibly encouraged by his
Yeah.
performances.
It's always a concern to see that flip from one side to the other.
Yes, I mean yes, but he took to the position very
Good.
well. He showed a lot of promise, and now he's won a starting job, pretty much running away at that right guard position. At least that's the word that we've gotten.
Right.
And then Jalen McKenzie will slide over from right guard to right tackle,
Okay.
and he is a guy who was maybe a little bit up and down at the right guard position last year, but he's always wanted to play tackle more. He sees
Oh,
himself.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so my hope is that he will slot into this position that he's most comfortable with, and
Right.
take that up take that up a notch for USC. So the right side is definitely more of a concern than the left side,
Hmm.
but the offensive line has settled into a situation where it's veterans across the board.
Okay.
Like the defensive line, if there's one injury,
The depth is going to get you.
they don't have the two deep involves a lot of true freshmen, so
Yeah.
get a little bit wonky there. But the guys that are going to start there early in the season, uh, they are veterans who I think should be able to do a minimum job there. I think that my expectation is
Hmm.
that this offensive line will be an improvement on last year's
Okay.
offensive line. And that is solely based on I think this group of players is more consistent
Okay.
than last year's group of players. But
It's fascinating the parallels that you're doing, right? Because if anything, right, at O line last year when you played us, well, actually all last year, we had two true freshmen on the O line, right? So if anything happens to you guys, you're in kind of in the same position. So it's just
yes,
it's very curious the parallels, being on one side or the other on the defensive side or from injuries or formation or anything else. So it's actually going to be a good story to see how both teams develop, especially since everyone is eyeing both USC and ASU to be, the teams in the South. Although I know everyone's high on Utah, but you, LSU lost 9 people on defense. So did Utah. So you can throw the
uh,
ball around, but anyway.
I think I said on a show I did earlier this week that if Utah wins the Pac-12 South, then Kyle Whittingham give him the Coach of the Year award just
Absolutely.
right away because the job he has to do to rebuild that team
Yes.
pretty
Especially
steep.
on the defensive side, being the defensive guy. And so, I agree 100%. And he got that wicked extension. So he may be the Utah coach longer than I die, even though even though he's older than me.
Yeah.
So exactly. So no, and the running back core, everyone from running back is back, or how's that looking?
Everybody's back.
Okay.
For USC running an air raid offense, they've got a lot of really good running backs to lean on.
Right.
The veteran guys, Stephen Carr and Vavai Malapai.
Hmm.
Now, and then the younger guys, Marquis Step, the power back, and then Keenan Kristen, the speed back.
Mm.
The biggest question for the running backs, and I hate to just turn everything into if they're healthy thing, but genuinely USC ran out of running backs last year. Genuinely USC
Right.
had on St. Brown getting carries against Colorado because they were down to just Keenan Kristen, the true.
Yes.
So it is a concern. Marquis Step is coming off an ankle injury that took him out last year. He had to
Okay.
have surgery on it. Comes back in camp and then immediately gets turf toe. So he's going to be playing on the turf toe, but
Okay.
he is dealing with turf toe.
Mm.
Vavai Malapai has been dealing with a hamstring injury this whole camp.
Right.
He's going to be available, but again, he's coming off of a hamstring injury.
Mm.
So the big storyline at running back, aside from how available will those guys be, is they're raving about Stephen Carr. Stephen Carr is healthy for the first time pretty much since his freshman season. He's looking bright. They've really raved about the power that he's added to his
Okay.
game. He's always been more of sort of a speedy guy. So he's on offense. I think if you were to ask me like you did on defense, who's the guy I'm looking forward to
Of
seeing?
course.
Weirdly enough, it's the running back. It's Stephen Carr because they've
Okay.
talked about him. So USC's running backs, I like genuinely am extremely excited about all four of them. Um, how much will they get the ball in an air raid offense? I
See, that's
mean,
always curious to me too, because there's always a run element. I mean, sometimes you see 3 or 4 yards on the ground, but I mean, I guess that always feels that a well-run air raid offense has yards on the ground. It has to, right? So
well,
I
because
think that's your advantage.
if you're gonna take what the defense gives you, a lot of the time they're gonna give you an unloaded box. And
Right.
this was one of the complaints I had. I mean, you should have seen me watching the Washington game last year, screaming about how they have
I
5 men in the
think I
box. They
remember
have
this.
4
Yeah.
men in the box. What are you like? Just run the ball. They're begging you to run the ball, and
Right.
you know,
And they kept tossing it. Yeah, I remember that.
well, so that's the question. Is I think that Clay Helton certainly wants the running game to be part of the offense.
Right.
But Graham Harrell's a former quarterback, so it is what
Right.
it is.
He wants to toss the ball. He doesn't want to sling it. So
Yeah.
that's fair. So now, transitioning to the game, right? There was a couple things, right? Regarding the whole, year of our COVID, right? ASU had 7 spring practices, and they've actually had a heck of a lot more lenient ability to practice, even when the lockdowns were going on and everything else in Arizona. So they kind of been the way that they haven't stopped. Even with Zoom meetings, they were able to still do smaller cohorts and be able to practice that way. Do you think that is an advantage relative to the number of practices USC has had?
It's got to be. It's
Okay.
got to be. Now, the great equalizer is that ASU is bringing in a new offensive
Mm-hmm.
coordinator, bringing in new dynamic with the defensive
Right.
coordinators. So the job that ASU had in the offseason was pretty hefty.
Yeah.
That ASU got those, what was it, 6 or 7 spring camp
7 in
practice
the spring. Yep.
certainly helps, that they were able to do. I mean, even if it was just conditioning work, that's
Right.
not conditioning work that USC was able to do. And we have heard from USC's coaches that a few guys that you would want to see be really heavily involved this season came back and needed to get back into shape. And
Okay.
so it's been a 6 week race to get them
Right.
physically ready. And I think that's where, um, if I would say that there's an advantage that ASU has, it's that they probably are ahead of the curve on the physical preparedness
Okay.
element. Um, that is something that I'm going to be watching USC closely. How well did they manage their 6 weeks
Okay.
of work? Because they are going to be going up against an ASU team that certainly got that plus.
Right.
So the advantage is definitely there. The tough part is obviously, even if ASU was able to have guys out on the field, I don't know how much actual schematic
Agreed.
coaching was able to be going on there. So
Fair.
I really, it's ASU definitely had a little bit of a leg up, but it's still going to come down to how well did USC's coaches prepare, how well
Okay.
did ASU's coaches prepare, and how serious. And this is the thing I'm going to judge USC by, so
Mm-hmm.
I can judge ASU by it too.
Sure.
How seriously did the players take their off season? Because
Mm,
my great equalizer, I think, for every team is really going to be, we're going to find out which teams took this seriously, which
yeah.
team as individuals stayed
Right.
in shape, stayed on top of their Zoom meetings.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to tune out of those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing that I'm looking for the
Okay.
most. Even if ASU had an advantage, if USC managed that better to a man, then it
Right.
won't matter. But if ASU managed that better to a man, the result on the field will show. I mean, the truth will come out
Oh,
on that.
absolutely. Do you think we're going to see some fatigue? I think there's going to be some fatigue. Like the arms on the hips are going to be are going to come out a lot earlier on both sides.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there were some cramps,
Yeah, oh, yeah, okay.
hands on the hips,
Even at
cramps,
that hour in the morning?
even
No.
at that hour in the morning. Man,
They
I
probably would be everywhere because it's cold.
as a well, and it's going to be raining, so I don't know, but
I
or
forgot
the
about
forecast
that.
at least
The rain's coming
is
in. I
rain.
forgot about. I
Yeah,
don't think anyone even thought about that because I know we're
as
getting some here in the Bay Area, so it's going to be. Oh, that's going to be a nice mud bowl then.
yeah, as if we didn't need anything to help with the sloppiness of this first game back. The rain
Exactly.
is forecast to be a factor. So, I don't know. When I haven't worked out for a while and then I go for a run, um, doesn't matter what the temperature is. I feel it in my legs. So,
Yeah,
uh,
that's fair.
right
That was
now,
me on Monday. So yeah, you're exactly right. Exactly right. So this one's actually going to be curious. So I don't. This one we were pre gaming about this question, but now that you've given me a little bit more information, how do you think USC with a new defense is going to prepare for a new offense with a new quarterback in the sense that they haven't seen this quarterback on the field since
well,
last.
that's the challenge, and that's the challenge that USC has. The advantage USC has is that they have the same offense. Bringing in
Mm-hmm.
a new defense, it's not a super drastic change, but it's
Okay.
enough of a change, and it's enough of a sort of new faces going on there. USC has emphasized, at least when they've talked to us in the media, because they haven't seen what a Zach Hill ASU offense looks like,
Okay.
because they didn't get to face Jaden Daniels in person last year.
Right.
It's all about them. It's all about the whole. It's all about us kind of thing.
Okay.
Um, there was mention of Todd Orlando having specific things that he likes to do when he's facing any sort of
Hmm.
quarterback like Jaden Daniels who can take off and run. Um, so that is certainly a wrinkle that
Okay.
USC is going to be prepared for. How effective that'll be against this specific quarterback, that
Right.
we will see that. But Todd Orlando apparently has put some thought into that, and the rest of it is really about making sure that they have as much of the defense that they're facing down pat, and that they take care of their business. And if I'm USC and I'm looking at it, USC's defense is bringing enough talent to the
Mm-hmm.
table that if they need to wing it a little bit,
Yeah.
in theory, just being big, strong, and fast will help
Right.
even that out. Especially knowing that ASU's offense is going to probably go through some growing pains too. So
Exactly.
USC's big thing is going to have to be taking advantage when those growing pains pop up. If there's a little moment of everyone not on ASU being not on the same page.
Agreed.
This comes back to what I was talking about earlier, though, where the truth will tell in this game who paid attention in those Zoom calls,
Yeah.
who was making sure that they have all their P's and Q's together.
Right.
And that I can't tell you, right now on Saturday,
Right.
the guys on one side or the other are going to have to prove that.
Exactly.
So that battle is going to, a lot of the focus, right, has been on Keaton Slovis and USC's air raid against that
Mm-hmm.
ASU defense that returns so many guys, that returns such a good secondary,
Right.
the Jack Jones factor, all that kind of stuff. Those are the things that we've been talking about. So we've sort of gotten tunnel vision over on the USC side, I
Mm-hmm.
think, about what is the air raid going to do to ASU's
Right.
defense. But
Exactly.
the really intriguing bit for me is that ASU offense against USC's defense, because they are both coming in on uneven footing at the very least, and
Right.
it will come down to who got their guys ready. It's just that simple.
And I think that's going to be you make a brilliant point around a new offense and howing to and your secondary being so strong. I fully expect at least one interception out of Jaden Daniels, like you said, only because it's a brand new offense and everything else. So I fully expect someone not necessarily being on the same page and having that kind of decision, and then USC being able to take advantage of it. But like you said, it's then okay. How can the offense capitalize on that relative to an another good secondary. So it'll be. It'll be a good chess match. I'm excited for it. I know a lot of people that I've talked with are expecting a close game. I don't think my heart can take that, especially this late in the season. But what are your predictions for the game? Right? What's your score and what do you look at? Yardage and production and all those other
Oh,
details.
oh, it's Thursday night, so I'm already very much on the USC's gonna roll train. That's typical. The later in the week we get, the more I'm
Closer to
convinced
kickoff.
USC's gonna roll every time. No, on our podcast, on the Retro Radio podcast, we gave our predictions the other night, and I
Okay.
think I went with 39-26,
Okay.
and I'm really banking on USC's offense jumping out to
Okay.
kind of like last year, where um, ASU's defense is figuring itself out
Hmm.
too, and I'm banking on USC's offense sort of pulling away and
Okay.
taking pressure off of USC's defense. But I expect USC's defense to give up, some points. I don't think this is going to be a game where they're going to limit Jaden Daniels,
Okay.
or Frank Darby is a concern because he just gets behind the defense once and there's a
Right.
touchdown. So um, the I think there will be points to be had, especially in a season opener in November. The Scoundrels will be there, absolutely.
Right.
But I ended up going with USC and USC to cover, and a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
that has to do, which on Monday, if you had asked me this question, I would have said USC is an 11-point favorite. What is Vegas smoking? But I get to the end of the week, and all of a sudden, I'm like, yeah, of course USC is gonna cover. But but a lot of that is I think that I am holding USC to a very high standard this year. I mean, just on Thursday,
Right.
he has 6 first team All Pac-12 selections.
Yes.
USC, if they are living up to the players that they have available to
Hmm.
them, then I am going to expect them to go out and beat good teams. And
Absolutely.
and ASU, and that's the thing is ASU is one of the toughest games on USC's schedule. That shouldn't stop USC if they do everything right
Right.
from going out there and imposing their will. This is another thing I talked to one of our contributors about. Um, the problem I have is that if you asked me who am I going to bet on, Clay Helton or Herm Edwards, I'm probably going to bet on Herm Edwards, and that's
Okay.
the thing that scares me. So
Okay.
this is very much a put up or shut up moment for Clay
Mm.
Helton, put up or shut up moment for Todd Orlando, and those guys. But um, if USC is the team that I think they are, I think they'll win
Got it.
39-26.
And if it's the other result, because I'm not saying the other word, but if it is the other result, do you think it's something that it will change the conversation of the season for fans?
Absolutely, because
Okay.
right now there's a possibility of USC going to the playoff. Like
Okay.
that's a discussion that's being had. Is
Right.
this team has a path to the playoff? If USC drops this game to ASU, that path to the playoff is closed. Now
Okay.
they can still compete for the Pac-12 title. Um,
Right.
they can still rally. It doesn't end the season,
Hmm.
but right now, Clay Helton's seat is very, very hot,
Yeah.
and the only thing keeping it from not being totally engulfed in absolute flame is USC has a path to the playoff.
Okay.
So
Fair.
things will get very ugly in USC land if USC loses. Even if USC loses a close game to ASU, which
Hmm.
I think is entirely possible. Like that would not be shocking at all because
Right.
uh, it is the year of our COVID, and I don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
Things will get very, very ugly. But also, I expect the first Fire Helton tweet to get sent to Raina Troy, 45 minutes before kickoff.
Yeah. I
So
was gonna say before the game even happens. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
have you
So
gotten any like during the off season?
oh yes. Half of our podcasts this year have been mailbag questions of like, what will it take to fire Clay Helton? What does Clay Helton need to do to get fired? It's like, well,
You may just have him for
first game,
another.
it would
Even if
not
he
be.
goes 4-2, you may have him another year.
Well, I am firmly in the belief that if he goes 4-2, he's not getting fired, and that's mostly because of the financial situations that most of
Mm,
the athletic departments are going to be going through. It's just a weird year,
It is.
but you know, the wrong kind of loss. If ASU comes to the Coliseum and blows USC out, which I wouldn't bet on, but I'm also not going to exclude that possibility because
There,
it is
everything's a
a possibility.
possibility, right? Every single permutation, in USC blowing out ASU, right, or
Yeah,
whatever it is, shutting them out for whatever it may be.
yeah,
It's a possibility. Who knows, given what this year has been.
yeah, and that's it's just so hard to gauge. So I'm being optimistic at this point on
Okay,
USC's behalf, but I'm always optimistic on USC's behalf. The
aren't we
Thursday
all?
before the first game of the season.
Excellent. And so then, to wrap it up, I know that we just got some news out of Cal earlier. So the city of Berkeley put a kibosh on the game, right, based on only one positive result, right? I haven't been able to do much else, but what have you seen since that announcement? Has there been any additional updates that you may have seen?
The reporting from John Wilner has made it seem like it's very much tied to Berkeley and
Hmm.
Berkeley alone. That this isn't a Pac-12 problem.
Right.
Which when I first saw that news, I was like, oh my gosh, if this is the Pac-12's protocol, then there's no way anyone's finishing the season
Yeah.
because if you have one quarterback or one safety get the virus, get a positive test, you can't play.
Right.
Like just because I mean, those are the guys who are going to be interacting with each other. So that was my big concern. I saw some speculation that maybe it's an offensive lineman
Hmm.
who had it, and that's one of the reasons that it took out the whole unit because it sort of
It could have impacted them all.
yeah.
Hmm.
So um, it's very strange though because the testing protocol was supposed to prevent exactly this.
Of course.
And it seems unreasonable to me, not knowing enough to say for certain that this is the case. But if you're doing daily testing,
Hmm.
if you're doing antigen testing, and then you also have the PCR
Right.
option, if somebody came up positive on Wednesday, couldn't the contact traced people get A, antigen testing right away,
Hmm.
and then B, have PCR tests on Thursday or Friday
Absolutely.
before the game and get cleared? Like if they come up negative, then why wouldn't they be able to be cleared? It just
Right.
doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So it does feel like it's bureaucracy and not necessarily science that's
Yes.
governing that.
And it's interesting you point that out because I just learned this, and I don't know, we may have talked about this on a previous show, but I learned during is that the city of Berkeley mandates what happens to Cal, not the county. So it's actually not, it's not even coming from the county, which is I believe Alameda, which is where I live in Alameda County. So it's
Mhm.
actually this decision came down from the city of Berkeley, not the county or anywhere else. So like you said, it may be one of those things where they just the county right next to to Alameda is Contra Costa, so they're having a big rush of cases. So if just one showed up on the team, maybe it was overreactionary on the part of Berkeley, but that, like you said, I think it was like to your point, it may have been more, you know what, we're just reactionary political. We're going to shut it down instead of saying, okay, we have all these tests. Let's go ahead and decide what we can do from there.
Yeah, my concern is simply that, being in Los Angeles, USC and UCLA have had some issues with
Mm,
LA County officials and getting approvals to hold practices and having the restrictions that they have for practice time and
right.
even the game USC is going to have half of the team suit up at the Coliseum locker rooms and half of them suit up at the locker room at the athletic facilities, and they're going to bus them over to the Coliseum. So like those are all the regulations that USC is dealing with.
Is that something that gets the away team has to go through as well?
That I don't know.
That's curious.
I wonder if
I
that
would
would
love for you to find that out.
I hadn't even thought of it. But it's something I could try to see if anybody knows. But um, there's limited. My guess is that it's limited indoor space, and
Interesting.
you can't have the hunting.
Oh, so you can't have all those bodies in that one space then.
So I'm wondering but ASU will be bringing a travel squad. So maybe they would fit, or maybe they're going to have to use facilities that are, USC.
Wow.
There are some athletic facilities nearby. They have
Hmm.
the soccer stadium, the LAFC, what
Oh, okay.
whatever bank stadium. I don't remember right
Right.
now exactly. In theory, maybe they use those locker rooms or
Okay.
something like that and have them, bus
Wow.
over from across the parking lot. But that is something that USC is dealing with. So that's one example.
Hmm.
But the concern then would be if USC had a positive test, how would LA County respond? If UCLA has a positive test, how would
Of
LA County
course.
respond?
Absolutely.
I don't know. Maybe they'll be more forgiving. Maybe they'll be more, they'll have better
Hmm.
dialogue. Maybe it helps that USC is a private school. Maybe the fact that you bringing up the city of Berkeley controlled what was going on with Cal. I hadn't even been thinking about that's a public school. That's a
Yeah.
university that is being controlled by there's more decision making that's going on from that
Right.
level. So maybe that explains it, but
Mm.
it's I don't know. On the eve of a season, it is certainly not the news I wanted to hear. It's
Agreed.
worried me. And on the plus side, Clay Helton has said that he's used this as a listen, guys, you got to be safe. You got to be
Yeah.
really, really safe. And I want to say that it was, maybe it was Frank Darby. I can't remember. Somebody was telling me that one of the, like an Arizona State player was quoted saying, like, getting in front of teammates and saying, like, hey, be careful because
Right.
it's, the season's lost if anybody
Hmm.
gets infected. Like it's, 3 weeks out or something like that. So
Exactly. And you're right, right? You would get in front of it, and it's like you got to be unified. I remember hearing those conversations back in spring, right before everything went down. That the team was very, very critical and held each other to a very high level of accountability. It's like, no, you cannot be running around like madmen because again, everything. If we are able to, we get to come back. At least we're in some form or some shape to be able to do that. And it was interesting too because I was on another call earlier today. There's concern that because of this decision on the part of Berkeley, that it's a 14-day window, so that may impact next week's game.
which is a
So
right.
yeah, it's our
Yeah.
game, so we'll see. So yeah, I know a lot of Cal fans are pulling out their hair just trying to figure it. Of course, there's actually it's like, of course, it happened to us, but
Yeah. Is that
anyway,
game at is it at ASU or is it at Cal?
it's in Tempe.
Okay.
It is.
Well,
So they may
so
be able to get away with it. It just depends on how many numbers they have.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
And
know. I know.
these
I
are
c-
not the roster things that I wanted to having to be
exactly. I know.
figuring out, but this is the, like, is it the year of our COVID? So
Exactly. We just get us to Saturday morning. Just get us
that's,
to Saturday morning. That's all we want.
yep.
Get us to Saturday morning. Well, thank you so much, Alicia. I really appreciate your time and spending um, this Thursday evening with me. What do you have up to? What would you like to plug? What would you like everyone to check you out at?
Yeah, so it's Random Troy at Random Troy on Twitter. We just dropped our ASU preview pod on Thursday morning. So if you wanted to go check out if ASU folks out there wanted to check out the view from the enemy, or USC
Absolutely.
folks or anybody else is curious about this matchup, we did a full rundown of that. So yeah, it's the podcast website randomtroy.com. You can find us on social media. I'm on Twitter at Penguin of Troy if you want to see USC stuff or random musings about cereal. That's
Absolutely. Your handle is right below your name right there on the stream. So absolutely. Are you going to be in the Coliseum?
yes, I
Okay.
will be in the press box. Hopefully, I am in the actual press box and not the outdoor level, which
Mm.
has apparently been opened up potentially for press because it is going to be cold and raining. So I'm hoping I'm
Oh,
not. But yeah, we were able to get a press box seat, so
okay, good.
it'll be different, but at least we'll be able to be there
And
and
you'll
cover
be
the
able
game.
to be there and witness it. So, well, thank you again. I really, really appreciate you, being able to be part of this. Love chatting with you as always, and we'll catch up definitely through the year. So, let me do a quick sign out. Let's stay on the Zoom for one moment, and then we will go ahead and go through that. But as always, I get to resize this image because that's awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining. As always, glad your week is going well. Hopefully, you enjoyed this break and cannot appreciate you enough. As always, I love you. Thank you so much for being part of this. Love yourself, as always, and love those around you, especially in these times. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for everyone in the chat being part of this. And as always, in this great week, now that we get to have some football, make sure that you're always staying close to everyone and that you're staying social. Good night, everyone.